your
see if
speaker
this
camera.
is Yeti. Is that right?
Your speaker should be same as, oh, you're not plugged in into the media wall. You have to be plugged into the media wall.
Sorry.
There you go. Okay, now you want your speaker to be Crestron. Yep, the second one.
Okay, so top will be Yeti, second Crestron, right?
Yeah, so
okay, just so I
the one that says
remember.
microphone,
Mhm.
Yeti, speaker,
Okay.
Crestron.
And then, not sure why this.
Just so it's
Looks
that's
like
like
that.
duplicated. You can either extend it or duplicate it depending on how you want your. Oh,
Like you see how it's all, well, I don't know what this
go to
big
your
black.
display settings.
Where's this
This display right there.
Somebody must have changed this on Saturday
course they
without
did.
me knowing.
Why wouldn't they just touch the
Display
arrangement?
Take
Yep,
this up.
take it off. There you go.
Okay, and then I'll just have to slide it over, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, but he's going to share the screen, so this doesn't. Should I go with those participants?
So excellent with that.
Okay.
That message.
Just do this.
It's yeah, you need a mouse pad for this, unfortunately.
And do this. Do this. Over, I guess, or down. What do
Well, you
think?
don't really care about that. So
No, so just get rid of it. Hide video.
Yeah,
And then just move this somewhere.
probably down here since that's
Okay.
what the instructions are.
Okay, so let me just make sure this and then.
Well, you also need to share the screen because you're not sharing it right now on Zoom.
Ah, that's right.
And you're currently on Zoom.
Okay, so I have to open the Zoom back up.
So just the Zoom window.
Okay. I've done
Nope,
this for
that's
so
okay.
long, Alex.
It's okay.
Do I make this
Yeah,
bigger?
Yeah. Expand.
Okay,
Share
so
screen.
share screen.
Share two. Nope, wrong screen.
Okay. Oh, sure.
Screen two.
This one,
I think that's yes.
and then do this, and then we'll go look at my other.
Okay, so now
And then minimize
minimize this. There you go.
this. Okay. Now let me go look at this thing.
I'm gonna stand here so you can.
If I can see that. And then.
Yeah, mute.
Yeah, that's. Okay. So this is fine. Oh, yeah, I'll test this and then I don't record.
Yeah.
I guess if you want to go up and make sure I can hear you.
I'm gonna read the title, but I don't feel comfortable saying that. So I'm just gonna go with 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Okay, cool.
Okay. Whatever. Okay, so Zoom is good. Is it through this that I'm recording this?
You can record through Zoom.
Okay. I didn't know it didn't matter for PowerPoint if I need, he doesn't have multiple to a meeting.
No, because you don't really use.
Like, do I really need to plug in this? I guess I can. Well,
we need the space camera.
switch this
Yeah.
to. And then I plug this in, which I guess is a useless wire. He doesn't have this.
Oh, this is the, so that's so you can get the feed from that.
Okay.
Switch from it, so you already missed this, but.
Okay,
you
he
need
doesn't
this.
have this
Oh,
hooked
it's
up.
not set up.
He doesn't have anything hooked up, so the camera's on, but I don't know. Does he usually have it? Flushed in?
The good thing is that it's something more.
Okay. This is.
Oh, no, back to there.
I know that works, but this isn't even lit up. Do you know this? Like, I didn't see it on switch. I didn't know. Is this on? Okay. Okay. That's a. Well, I didn't know. I was like, let me try it.
Yeah, we open it up. There you go. Right, we have it.
Okay, so, and this is automatically recording.
Yes. This is- Yeah.
Okay,
You don't need it. Just everything.
and then I will turn out my sound, just do it.
You may want to pause that.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our Connect seminar series. My name is Allison Heinz, and I'm a program manager with the Swartz Center. Before we get started, we do have a virtual audience, so thank you for coming. Feel free to interject and ask questions throughout. Unmute yourself via Zoom, and then in person, if you have questions, just raise your hand. Before the beginning of each of our Connects, we do like to ask if there's anyone that wants to give a pitch about themselves, a startup they're working on, if they're looking for teammates. So it's just a kind of a way to get to know everybody, and then at the end, you're able to connect. So do we have any volunteers today? Virtually or in person? Anybody? Okay, is there anybody virtual that would like to do that? Feel free to unmute. Okay, I guess. Okay, yes, we don't have any volunteers today, so we'll get started. Today we have Brad Iben. Thank you so much for coming. Brad is the Executive Director of the MS and Product Management Program at CMU. Before directing the program, Brad taught HCI for product managers and was an adjunct advisor for the program's capstone projects. So Brad, thank you for coming.
Hi all. So I'm going to lead with okay.
It should go. And then go back. There. Sure. I took them out, but I can go look here in a minute. Sorry if this one. So I can go forward. You might have to hit the arrows. I'm
Yeah,
not sure what happened.
No problem.
Okay.
So you got a preview to the most important takeaway of the entire discussion. If you don't remember anything else about this presentation, these 6 words, I think, are the absolute key, the most important to solving any problem, including our topic today, design problems. And they work out. Okay. And as it says across the bottom, this is really 90% of what we're going to talk about today. So if you're in a hurry, you can leave, you got the gist of it. But we'll talk about why, we'll talk about examples, and we'll do it interactively. And with that in mind, we'll start with a design activity. That's the reason. For those who entered late, there are pens and paper up front. We're going to do a sketching activity. And
I keep seeing this. I'm sorry, Brad.
no problem. Okay, we're set. Okay, we're going to take about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and I'll ask everybody, sketch a superhero problem solver and think about the attributes that this superhero has and make it your own, have fun with it. But think about what is elemental, what's fundamental in problem solving, because that's really what design is. And that's what we'll talk about today. So have some fun with it. Think about, if you had a superhero that could solve any problem in the world, what would that look like? And go ahead, take 2 or 3 minutes, and we will talk about your designs and what I have in mind. It can't be Iron Man. For those mechanical engineers in the room. About 15 more seconds. All right. So real quickly, anybody, what came to mind first? Any thoughts as to attributes for the superhero? What did it look like? What qualities did it have?
A big brain.
And big brain. That's a common one.
I had a wing.
Any others?
Wings.
Someone with great observation skills.
Observation. That's a good start. It's like you read my presentation already.
To remove confirmation bias.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Multiple hands was the answer that was just given. Very close to what I had in mind, actually. I'll share my own thoughts on the matter, and that'll be kind of the basis of what we discuss for the rest of the presentation. And there will be additional activities, intend to keep this interactive and fun, basically. But my thought is eyes like an owl. Always observing, always watching, always paying attention. Similarly, ears like a bat. Heart like a lion, not afraid to make mistakes, not afraid to even be wrong, but having that courage to solve these problems. Hands that are busy and building like a beaver. And teamwork like a beehive, all of these attributes, clearly from the animal world, but combined together, one of the thoughts that I'd like to share is, first, I cheated. Mine's not really a sketch, it's a picture. But in thinking about how to imagine the mindset going into the discussion and going into the problem-solving endeavor, a couple of toddlers in a sandbox. They're always learning, they're always paying attention, they're always watching you, listening to you. They're not afraid to make mistakes. They're always, and if they have something that they want to do, they're going to jump in with their hands. They're going to get hands-on. They're literally dirty, as in the topic of the title of the presentation today. And the reason that I show this image is because when you get stuck in a problem, you don't know where to start. You know you have an open-ended problem. You don't even know what the starting point is. Jump in with your hands. Go to the source. Go to the sandbox. And again, there will be thoughts as far as takeaways to think about after you leave here. But many of you, I talked with some before the session started. Many of you are probably in situations where you have an open-ended problem to solve. In fact, we just got done with our internships this past summer, my course, and a lot of their internship assignments was, we need this thing, go figure out how to make it. And almost in every instance, the answer was, or the starting point was, well, go to your customer, find out what their life is like, find out what they're trying to accomplish. So we'll build upon that for the remainder of the discussion today. And for the purpose of this discussion, I'll talk about product design, but when I talk about product, I'm using a very broad definition of product. It can be hardware, it can be software, it can be services, it can be combinations of any of those three. As it relates to this discussion, it is a product for you. If you don't get some need fulfilled during this course of this discussion, my product has failed and I'll go back and do a next revision. But really, during the course of discussion, I want to make this about what is interesting to you, what might help you learn something, take something away, apply something even more so. So keep questions, raise your hand, chime in, add conversation as we go through. And like I said, your goals are what's important here. It's not me just going through a slideshow. It's about, how does this apply? How can I use this? How can I think differently through a set of problems I might be facing? Because I don't know everybody who's in the audience. I know I got to know some of your backgrounds, some of your experiences. I'm curious, how many master students do we have in here? Mostly master, almost all master students. Okay, that's a good start. So some of you, how many of you have dealt with design related courses already? Okay, a good number. So today we'll talk about the importance. I'm assuming that the importance of getting dirty in the problem solving process is of importance to you. We'll talk about how to explore a problem. And we'll talk about what's next. I'll provide some resources, and there, like the earlier example, there will be some homework assignments, some things to think about in the work that you're doing and the product that you're working with. Out of curiosity, how many of you are working actively either as an entrepreneur with your own product or working in a world where you're working on a product in either as an engineer or as a manager? Okay. Okay, good. Great. So these will be the assumed goals. And the interaction for today, have fun. There aren't any wrong answers. Have a sketch notepad and conversation will ask questions. So with these things in mind, are there any goals that you'd like to take out of this that I missed? Or is there anything that, given the topic, given that we're going to explore problem solving, anything else that is worth? Okay, if we arrive at something, if you think of something as we're discussing, please feel free to ask. So with that in mind, we'll get started on our second activity. This one is also sketching to an extent. Very simple, design a toothbrush. Again, I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes. Make it your own. We'll go for another minute. Few more seconds. Okay, so everybody in the room, and for those online, you may not have heard it, but we had probably the best possible question asked from the front row here. The question was asked, are we allowed to know who the toothbrush is for? How many people had a user in mind or a type of user in mind as you were designing? Mostly the people that were in design courses. That's one of the key points. So if you were going to design this toothbrush, is it for a dentist, like mass usage? Is it for an astronaut, zero gravity? Is it for a traveler? I mean, we already have the travel size toothbrush, but the idea that designing something just for the sake of designing it, as opposed to designing it with somebody in mind, there's a huge difference. And in order to build into that, even a better way to ask that question, or a better thing to design than the toothbrush itself, is let's say it's for travelers. Travelers need a way to clean their teeth because they don't always have access to water. So now that frames your design with a purpose. There's a why behind the design itself. So the idea of thinking about both a user and an unmet need is critical in the design process and thinking about solving a problem for that person, that user. And a very simple way to look at it, and anybody who's working on a product right now should be able to think about their own product in these terms. I think about the MSPM program in these terms. Who is my program for? And who is it serving? And what need is it fulfilling for them? And the way that we look at it is to say blank needs blank because blank. So the user needs some solution because they have an unmet need. Very simple, but you can rethink the most complicated problems in these extremely simple terms. And if you can't answer this, you need to think about it. And you need to think about, why don't I understand who my user is? Or why don't I understand what their unmet need is? And if you can't build off this foundation, you probably don't have a direction. You're sailing without navigation. Now, in contrast, I'll turn to my own toothbrush. Normally I bring it in, but that's kind of gross. So I'll just show you an image of it. My toothbrush at home has Bluetooth. Now, I have a confession to make. I have never used the Bluetooth function. I never will use the Bluetooth function. I can't imagine what the Bluetooth function, what problem it would solve for me. Not in a million years. Like, I can only imagine it creating more problems. But it was inexpensive. So it was inexpensive and it had it had 4.5 stars, and it's an excellent toothbrush for what it's worth. But imagine the design meeting, the pitch meeting for this toothbrush. Bunch of designers, bunch of engineers sitting around a room, maybe some executives. You know what we really need? We need people to hold their phone while they brush their teeth. I can't imagine that anybody tested this adequately, or even more importantly, like, so the scenario we have here is we have a tech gadget being sold at 41% off its price because that tech feature is not valuable to anybody. It's not something that you wake up in the morning, you say, hey, I need to go brush my teeth, let me grab my phone. It's if you followed users, if you followed customers in their morning routines, you'd find that nobody finds this practical. And it's not just me, like, I'm not the only one. If you read the reviews, they're like all over the place. In fact, this one actually highlights that you can turn the Bluetooth off, like with 3 exclamation points. And I agree with them 100%. So this begs the question, are we using technology in this scenario to solve a non-existent problem? Are we building a cool gadget just because we can build a cool gadget? Or is it valuable to the user? So is this a problem to begin with? Are we solving the wrong problem? And we'll talk about solving the right problem. Any thoughts as to how this Bluetooth toothbrush might have been born? Like, who came up, how would the idea have been generated? How would they have gone about building it and thinking that this is something that's useful? Because I've used this example before. I've never seen a single person in the audience think that that's a great idea.
It's not really a great idea, but I can understand that they wanted to make a toothbrush which will help you time each quadrant for 30 seconds and entirely 2 minutes.
Now, that's a good point. It does that mechanically. You don't need.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Maybe when they were designing this product, it was when anything with connected devices or like IoT devices increasingly popular.
Yeah.
They're trying to fit this cool feature in it. It's like people nowadays trying to fit ML into everything.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly, yeah. And they're adding a high cost feature to something that nobody wants to pay for.
So is the 41% off, is it from because users not really used to it?
I assume so, like, I bought mine on an extremely deep sale. Like, there's no way they made money when I bought mine. Let me put it that way.
You should give them the benefit of the doubt. Do you think if they were targeting like parents
who wants to make sure their kids like rush X amount of moments.
It's possible. It's possible.
I mean, yeah, that's a stretch. but-
Yeah, you're still asking the kids to use a phone to brush, you know, it's like, yeah, yeah. Trendy or just for the appeal of the novelty.
Yeah, I mean, in general, kinds of products that become successful, or maybe some product. If we thought about it in the past, where they consider, we might know that that's not gonna take it. Like, for example, I watched, like, you guys went back 10 years and said, like, you should get a device where you can, like, read text messages or calls on, like, the phone. People don't really know it's too small of a screen, or you already have a phone, what's neat, have another gadget. Like,
Mhm.
kind of thought, so I feel like maybe they're just like shooting in the dark, hoping that.
Yeah, yeah,
Part of me feels like a, kind of designed in a vacuum and with like a bunch of toothbrush knobs. And like, you know, like, if you pitch this to a row of toothbrush knobs, I can imagine this going really well, because it's like, they care about that experience.
yeah,
So I think that they maybe miscalculated how widely appealing that would be. Because I think
Yeah.
that's it's still good it exists, and like, there's some people who care about it, I just don't think it has the
Yeah.
mass.
Yeah.
appeal.
and the funny part about that is pretty much any time that we talk about design and features to products that you use, college students think their world is surrounded by college students. So that's their entire reflection. So they're always looking at something that affects me and how I use it or how my buddy uses it, not how the general population of users or segments of users might use it.
Maybe they want their in science fiction movie. Wild imagination of
Yeah.
Internet of Things.
Science fiction. My personal hypothesis, I have no inside knowledge of this, is that this sounds like the kind of idea that a tech executive comes up with and just says, make it happen. Like no idea as to how it will actually be used. It's just like, this is the new technology. We need to implement it. Go do it. And like, without that research, without understanding the lives and the processes of the users, they just went ahead and did it. That's my hypothesis. So I'll give you a second to read this quote as it relates to this. The manager who comes up with the right solution to the wrong problem is more dangerous than the one who comes up with the wrong solution to the right problem. And I think this is an example of that. It's a profound quote, and it speaks to what we'll explore today, is the idea of ensuring that you understand the right problem to be solved. So any ideas on how we would have designed this or not designed it in this case with this in mind? How might you have gone about understanding what the next toothbrush design should look like? Market research,
Focus groups.
focus groups.
This is a very, I mean, I shouldn't say generic, this is something which everybody does. It's pretty much, given that you might have some experience with the product and you want to.
Yeah.
Me personally, like, the stakeholder is pretty much amazing. You can just have a very basic design and like say on one space, something like that as category.
So another hand,
Expert.
expert opinion.
I think also like, see if someone would actually invest in it. Like.
Yeah. Are they willing to pay the price? Yeah. Another one of the topics, or the gist of what we'll discuss through the remainder of the discussion is, like, in an ideal sense, your designers, your engineers, your product team, they're observing people through their daily processes. They're having people journey what their morning routines look like.
So, in my personal opinion, Bitcoin is also an example of solving a wrong problem, because I never saw anyone paying through Bitcoin. Nobody offered me that I'll pay you $10 through Bitcoin,
Mhm.
and I never paid anyone. So it's an investment or a trading platform, or gambling platform.
Yeah,
It's not a quant.
yeah.
So, so the criteria that whether someone is all that we have heard,
Yeah.
all fail.
Yeah, and the question becomes, and for those online, the example of Bitcoin as not creating value was raised in the room. But so with this in mind, we'll talk about what is design. And for the purpose of today's discussion, design is not engineering a cool tech gadget. It's not building something because you can. It's building something that solves your customers' problems. That's the goal. That's what creates value. So as homework for those of you that do have products you're working on, think about writing one of those Mad Libs for your own product if you haven't already. Blank needs blank because blank. And that's the user, what your product represents, and then what their unmet need is. Basically, why does it exist and for whom? So the foundation and the philosophy behind what we're discussing in today's context, the idea of problem solving and equating design and problem solving as equivalent really leads to the idea that if you know how to think through a problem, if you know how to define a problem correctly, you can use that methodology, you can use that mindset to solve any problem. If you know the way broadly, you'll see it in everything. These problem solving techniques are universal. They're not just tech, they're not just entrepreneurship, it's everything. And a lot of what we discuss and a lot of this philosophy comes from Toyota. That's where I started. How many people here are familiar with the Toyota way or the reputation Toyota has for creating value and problem solving? Okay, a few people. Toyota really, like, they learned to, probably better than anybody, at least at the beginning, build a culture around problem solving. And the culture of problem solving, and that I failed to introduce, the initial quote slide was from an ex-president from Toyota Motor Corporation, the go see, ask why, show respect. Their whole idea is to go to the source of the problem, understand it, study it, use all your senses to embrace it so that it can be solved properly and then improved upon. And without that foundation, there is no way to improve it. Like I said, it's this book it explains the Toyota management principles, but it's to create value, to be hands-on, focus on the customer. They were one of the first to really look at, does what we're doing create value to the customer or does it not? The opposite is waste. And then the problem is most important. In fact, at Toyota, there's a saying that no problem is a problem, which means that if you don't have a problem, if you aren't working on a problem, then you don't understand what your problems are. So getting dirty, getting into the mix, going to the source, meeting with your users, your customers is really key. And your other stakeholders, whoever else is on your team, like understanding what your team's needs are just as important in problem solving as anything else. And it's something that they just do culturally as a default. It's the way that they're trained. It's the way I was trained. It's just in everything that they do. It's even in their advertisements. Here's an ad for a Tundra showing dirty hands fixing something. Here's photos from their website showing how their R&D department works. And their action shots, they're doing things. They're not sitting at a desk. At Toyota, the idea of the phrase desk engineer is an insult. Like if someone says that guy's a desk engineer, that means he doesn't go out and look at the problem and meet with his customers often enough. So like I've heard people referred to as that, and it's not good. It's not the way you want to be viewed in that environment. And it's not just true at Toyota. Amazon has the phrase, start with the problem and work backwards, right? This is a shot from McKinsey's website. They have a whole department, a whole program helping customers go and see. Very simple, but the value is there. And the idea is not obvious to everybody, that your solutions or the starting point for your solutions exist at the source of the problem. And then this guy famously, infamously, brought all his managers back to the office recently because he learned the hard way at Tesla that you can only solve problems if you're in the environment where they're occurring. So today, we'll talk about it, the beginning of, we won't get through the entire process, but there's a design thinking process called the double diamond. And the people love frameworks, so we'll talk about it, but I'll encourage you to think more broadly than just the framework itself. And as it relates as a lead-in to this process, this quote from Einstein: if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And that's like, I can't think of a better way to express the importance of knowing what you're solving and why. So the double diamond process, it's relatively, I'll use the cursor so people online can see, but it's an extremely simple development process. It starts with a hypothesis here at this intersection. And then the reason that it's represented by diamonds is the shape should be reflective of the mindset through each phase of the process. So as you're discovering the process, you start with a hypothesis, but you want to walk in with the idea, the understanding, the knowledge that you don't really understand it. You think you might have an idea, but now is time to explore. So you want to think divergently. You want to be open-minded and find all sources of information. Then in the define step, now that you've had that, you've collected data, now you want to refine it and find a direction forward. Then as you're developing and thinking of new ways to solve the problem, then you think divergently again, sketches, prototypes, all these things. And then when it's time to deliver, that's your testing, that's your refinement again, right before you're ready to go. And that can be divided into the left side of this diagram is the problem space, the right side is the solution space. And throughout it, of course, you're iterating, you're finding new information and maybe taking a step back or recalibrating your hypothesis in the first place. This is extremely simple, but so many people make the mistake of starting with the solution first. We've all done it. Everybody here has started thinking they know a problem, jumping to a solution, and then realizing, oh, I need to go back and understand again. Most companies, in my experience, only exist in this right-hand space, and that they're always spinning their wheels and making subpar results because they're not truly, again, like the Bluetooth toothbrush. Well, let's design something and build it without understanding whether there's a problem to be solved in the first place. So we'll go through, in today's discussion, we'll probably only have time to get through the discover stage, but just to give you a sense of how, like this presentation could go for hours and hours, but to give you a sense of how important I think the discover phase is, this is my storyboard for the presentation. The highlighted area here are the points that I wanted to make on discover, and everything else is the other three phases. So like the discover phase is where there's gold to be mined, where there's so much value and so many ways to not do it right that it's just so significant in importance. So with that in mind, we'll talk about that phase. So the goals, as you're discovering, are to collect data, to empathize, and to observe. And like we talked about in the other examples, get to the source, collect data, not just quantitative data, but also qualitative data. How does like in this, how does your customer feel when they're using your product? Like, is it this guy? Because that's not good, but it's excellent data. Asking questions about why he's slamming his head on the laptop there. The mindset, and this is extremely important, and this is why I love that initial quote so much. Be respectful. Understand that the person who you're trying to serve has a perspective. They're looking at the world in a certain way and trying to accomplish a goal. and they're either not accomplishing it in a preferred manner, or they're failing at this goal, and your value proposition is to help them. It's to solve their problem for them. Be inquisitive. Don't assume you know things. Don't assume you know why people are acting the way they're acting. Ask them. And be hands-on. If you can do an activity yourself, if you can be part of whatever their process is, do it. Be there with them. That's called context, and we'll talk about contextual interviews. One reason to not assume, make assumptions about your user. And the example I used earlier, where like if you talk to a bunch of college students about a new feature for Spotify, it will almost be tailored specifically and only to what college students would find useful, and not let's say retired people or anything else like that. So this graph shows basically computer literacy, computer skill by country and by population. So like most of us at CMU are in the level 3 green area there. So we think everybody is, but in reality, you're designing things for people that are afraid of computers, did not grow up with computers. You may be anyway, you may not be. It's important to understand that. And if they're not comfortable, if they're not even like a level 1 computer user, then you really need to understand how to solve their problem in a way that is not your way. And then I love this graph. This is from James Clear, and it's a simple Venn diagram of what the facts say and what confirms your beliefs, and how we as designers and problem solvers overvalue and undervalue those different sets of information. And it's entirely true. And entering the process, knowing that you're subject to this is critically important. So back to the discover phase, the tactics. There are many, many, many tactics. You saw all those Post-it notes on my storyboard. For the purpose of today's discussion, and it looks like we're about right on time, we'll talk about contextual interviews, 5 whys, journey mapping, and stakeholder mapping. So like I mentioned earlier, a frustrated user might seem like a problem, but in reality, they're the source of the best information you can find. Find out, go talk with them, sit with them, be with them, understand what is frustrating them, what it is that they hope to accomplish, and what it is that the obstacles that stand in their way. And an example that I'll use is, I use this is a barcode scanner. And the story is that I was tasked with setting up basically an inventory management system in which we had a problem at a factory where incorrect shipments were leaving, and it was the #1 defect in this factory. And nobody in the office, because they never wandered out to where the action is happening, nobody in the office had any idea why this was happening. So I was tasked with figuring out how to solve this very open-ended problem. We're shipping the wrong stuff. We don't know why. Go figure it out. So in line with the Amazon and Toyota philosophy, starting at the source of the problem and working backwards, I went to talk to the guy on the shipping dock. And I walked out, like, hey, can you tell me about how we might, what process goes into getting shipments onto the trucks? And then let's see if we can work back and find where the problem exists. And at the first meeting where I was talking with him on the job site, this barcode scanner was set aside. Like, this is his tool for the job. And he was just not using it at all. And I went to talk to him and ask him about, can you tell me a little bit about this barcode scanner? And instantly his shoulders slumped. He looked at the ground. He goes, I don't want to talk about it. Nobody listens to me. Nobody's going to fix it. It's just going to always, because he's getting yelled at for shipping the wrong stuff. His tool doesn't work, and he just doesn't want to deal with it. But that was gold. That was the perfect lead in to say, well, okay, help me understand, or can you show me or allow me to try it? And sort of team up with them in solving this problem, or at least uncovering where the problem might exist. And one thing led to another. And I gathered so much information just from this interaction that we were able to uncover an extreme number of problems, and it turned into this massive project to build a new software system for use inside the factory. But the idea was, short of going and being with him on site in his context, helping him to accomplish the goals that he had and those things that he was being held responsible for, unjustly, I might add. He just felt frustrated, felt defeated, felt like there was no victory possible. But partnering with him, understanding his life, his experience was everything in unraveling and opening up him in terms of sharing anecdotes, sharing what his struggles, what his difficulties were. And that kind of leads into one way to expand upon an interview like this, or expand upon a stated problem or a surface level problem. This is another Toyota tactic that has been adopted broadly, is the idea of asking why 5 times. And the theory behind the idea of 5 whys is, if you ask why is this thing broken, you'll get a surface level answer. The battery doesn't work, or it stopped communicating in the case of the barcode scanner. So the surface level problem was that the shipment was wrong, right? Or shipments were wrong. That was the #1 defect in the entire business at the time. Why? There was a tracking system error. Why? The scanner was broken. Why? The IT department didn't respond when he asked them for help. And why was that? Because they were understaffed and their point person was on vacation. So we found that the root of the problem was really in the support system. He lost faith in the idea that anyone was going to help him. So he just gave up and stopped using it, and the problem persisted until we resolved the root of the problem. Another useful way to look at your user's journey, user's experience, is mapping their journey. And it might look complicated, but it's actually very simple. It's the idea that you create a workflow of the task that you are trying to help, really more than anything, their current state task. So if you are trying to observe the way that an Uber driver finds a new pickup, or like a work process, or a process that your user is trying to accomplish, and then map it out step by step. And then in this case, it's very simple, just like which parts of that process, which steps in that process are delightful, which are neutral, and which are the pain points. And you can start looking at tackling those pain points and what is leading to that frustration, that dissatisfaction. So, and this is another, just in regards to how to, this is the results of data that I collected from interviewing 5 of my students a couple of years ago. And it's not yet arranged, but it's the data, it's the insights that I took from these 5 interviews of, what is it about MSPM that attracted you? What is it about MSPM that that you find either extremely helpful or problems that we can make better? And this, I don't have the image of it, but it leads to the creation of things like affinity diagrams, where you can start to visualize and categorize and prioritize solutions. That's as far as I'll go in the solution space, but we'll go into design activity number 3. And I'll ask you to sketch the sequence of steps on a product that you're working on. And if not on a product, if you aren't working on a product, maybe think about your morning routine, and sketch the steps that you take in your morning routine. And then have 3 categories under that sketch that are smiley face, neutral face, and sad face. And think about every morning, if that's your choice, if you don't have your own product, Think about every morning, like, what are the things that I look forward to? The cup of coffee, or, you know, what bothers me waiting for the bus? And just think about that. And then, like, even in your own scenario, if waiting for the bus or if the commute, they're pretty easy ones to pick on. If there are points of dissatisfaction for you, like if you're entrepreneurial, now you know this is something I can explore. Is this a pain point for everybody else? And is there a way to solve it later on down the road? So again, we'll take a couple of minutes. We'll take a few minutes and let everybody sketch. Just sketch a process, either from your own product or from your life. You can use morning routine is an easy one.
Can you repeat the part about the solution?
The solution, the opportunity is in those pain points. You know, so we aren't working on solution yet. We're just still documenting. We're articulating the problem, right? And exploring the problem. We'll go about 30 more seconds. I see a lot of writing still. Hopefully you can doodle on this in the rest of your classes today. Not that I encourage drifting off or doodling or anything like that. Okay, we'll move on. We won't dwell on the results, but it was a thought experiment, if nothing else, to walk through that idea, see it through the filter of what is enjoyable and what is painful and where my problems exist. The homework is make it real for those working on a product, especially. Use your own product and think about your pain points, your delightful points during the process. Think about the process itself. And if you haven't already, map the process in a discrete manner so you understand step by step what you're doing and what you intend for your users to do. And then even better, follow users of your product, follow users of your competitors' products, and understand the same as to how they view the experience. The final thing that we'll discuss, ooh, that's grainy, that's pixelated. The final thing that we'll discuss is the idea of stakeholder maps, because design and problem solving doesn't affect only your end user. Your team is affected. Your business stakeholders are affected, and there can be many more affected people as you're designing a process or a product than you anticipate without listing it out. Like this, it's very grainy on the screen, but this is my own programs. This is the MSPM programs stakeholder map. And I did it soon after accepting the role of directing the program, because it was critically important to understand who are my stakeholders, who's involved. As I look for problems to be solved within the program, who do I need to consider? Who's affected by the quality of the program? And what you can't see on the screen because of the pixels is in this image, I have it broken down into three main categories: students, industry, and administration. But zooming out, like this activity is a thought-provoking activity. Branching out, I realize each of these has like 5, 6 different types of people, more in some cases. And then branching out again, like just to operate the product that is the MSPM program, all these stakeholders, actually, there's even another tier of this in reality. All these stakeholders are affected. And I need to understand how each of them views what each of their needs are from the program, prioritized, with obviously like students being way up top. And but look at their needs. Am I understanding their needs? Am I taking the time to be with them and communicate about their needs adequately, to the point that like maybe I only need to talk to my dean once a year, once a quarter, whatever it might be. But I still need to understand how she and he, because we're SCS also, how they view their needs from the program, every bit as much as how the students, and design the program accordingly and solve the program's problems accordingly, the same way that I would with students. And this basically leads into activity 4. We'll skip activity 4. You can take it and run with it afterwards. But the idea is, again, for this product or products that you're working on or have worked on, like, who are your stakeholders? Do you really know? And are you communicating? Are you meeting their needs to the extent that you're confident you are? And that leads to the homework assignment is, do you have all adequate communication with them? Do you understand their needs? And how are you confident that you understand their needs? Do you know what, like I deal occasionally with the legal team here at CMU. Do I know what their day-to-day workload is like? And do I understand why they're making rules and different decisions that affect the program, so that I can adapt accordingly? Like walking in their shoes is critical, and especially for those people that are your closest stakeholders. So that's the beginning of the double diamond process. We won't go through the design stages because that would take additional hours, but I thought I heard something. Anyway, in closing, this quote from the former president of Toyota Motor Corporation is the thing to remember. If you don't know where to begin in your problem-solving journey, go see, ask why, show respect. Our goals were to talk about the importance of getting dirty, how to explore a problem, and what's next, and that is next. Some resources that are extremely helpful. I talked about some of Don Norman's work in the course of the discussion. That chart about computer users was his or theirs. Excellent book, Design of Everyday Things. They have excellent articles on their website, and it's something that's worth subscribing to on LinkedIn, just so that you get updates, that type of thing. The Toyota Way. There was very. I'm a little surprised that it isn't more well known, but it's for those that understand the way that Toyota approaches problems and creating value. This is critical. And Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson is a good one. It touches on it touches adjacent to most of what we talked about today, and talks more about finding your market and then creating minimum value products. And if you're really interested in this, you can apply to MSPM, which I expect to see 50 applications today. Kidding, but not really. No, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm available. I sit on the 5th floor right above this room, 5400. Please feel free to reach out. I love talking about this stuff. It's a weird obsession I have. So it's kind of my welcome diversion from doing emails all day and paperwork. So happy to talk about this further. And there's a whole, this could be expanded into a whole series. I mean, what we talked about today was mostly a crash course of the HCI for product managers program that horse that we have in the MSPM program. Rami, am I right? All right. Any questions?
I don't know why. I mean, able to piggyback and observe the users because will say different things than the video can do. At the same time, I'm thinking, how does this framework apply to fully cut and paste things for somebody that's something new that people don't have the mindset to get? An example would be like ATM machines. I heard that when people were asked if they would use ATM machines, they said that they would never trust them to use their money. So how do you innovate and
That-
encourage?
I think that your question reminds me of the maybe quote from Henry Ford about if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. If you focus on what it is that they want to accomplish, focus on their goal, and then test, prototype, test and prove that their goal can be accomplished with this technology, then I think it changes the idea that like it's no longer, I don't trust this computer to handle my money. It's, I need to get money. And this computer represents a simpler way to do it, or a more convenient way to do it than going to the bank, right? Because like, and it gets to the idea of mapping their journey before the technology. Going to the bank is a pain. They're only open during certain hours. I don't want to stand in line. All these things on that journey map would be pain points. So building from there, like, okay, we've identified where the pain exists. Now, this is not a computer. This is a solution to the pain. Does that make sense?
How did you get the word dirty into the title of your lecture?
Being at the source of the problems, getting your hands dirty, jumping in metaphorically. I should have drilled that in a little bit more.
My response was dirty politician. Dirty then.
No, politics doesn't solve any problems.
They are the problem.
No, that's a good question.
Okay, dirty.
Yeah, getting into the source of the problem.
Absolutely. Good job.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
All right, thanks for joining. Hi. Brad. Nice to meet you.